Here at Baylor University, a committee is now looking into allegations the school may have given Patrick Dennehy money that was in violation of NCAA rules.
Today, the questions aren't about Pat and they aren't about Dotson. They're about me, my coaches, and our basketball program. There's been allegations that we haven't followed the rules. We follow the rules, however difficult they may be, for 30 years. But I believe that the Board of Inquiry will again find that a lot of the things that have been mentioned and reported are in fact not quite as they have been portrayed.
This is an internal Baylor committee, and the people on the committee work for Baylor, Underwood being the primary one. Coach Bliss tells me that he meets with the Baylor Internal Investigation Committee on a daily basis.
I was at the Farrell Center, and Coach Bliss was walking down towards me, and I said, "Coach, I'm sorry that you're going through all the things that you are." He said, "Oh, thanks, Matt," and he took me into his office. And I remember going in there thinking he's going to explain everything to me, and we're going to walk out of here and we're going to be good. And he started to tell me about this story of how Patrick was paying for school and how he had gone into their apartment and found drugs and rolled up money, and how all these things, none of it was his fault.
At some point, Coach had just come back from meeting with the lawyers, and he seemed very flustered. It was just the 4 coaches in the coaches' locker room, and I remember Coach saying, if somebody would just say that they paid Dennehy's tuition, I'd buy him a Cadillac. Shit, I'd buy them 4 Cadillacs. And he kind of starts telling the story about maybe Pat being a dealer, and I remember telling him, we can't operate like that. And that's when he was like, well, do you want to get fired? And I said, no, I do not.
Abar was balking at it. Abar was fearful and obviously wasn't compliant.
I remember coming back to my office, and I found a copy of his contract on my desk with the portion highlighted that he had the authority to hire and fire the assistants. And at that point, I understood what a reality this was becoming.
He's backed into the ultimate corner. We're talking about a murder. We're talking about a young man who's dead. We're talking about family grieving, very publicly upset. And now this bizarre cover-up that he's being asked to participate in. He doesn't want to do it. And he knows that if he says anything about it, it'll be his word against Bliss's and a powerful, well-respected head coach.
This could seriously alter the murder investigation to a crime. This was going to result in everybody being put on a witness stand under oath and being asked these questions. And once that happens, once this begins, those lies, because the trial is so far off, will be truth by the time that we get to trial. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't kind of motivated in a fashion by that to do what I did. I went and I picked up a $25 recorder, and I actually wired myself up. The first day I recorded with Coach Bliss. Coach Bliss is at the board. He writes reasonable doubt.
Reasonable doubt is...
And he underlines it.
There's nobody right now that can say that we paid Pat Dennehy until he's dead. Okay? So what we have to do is create the reasonable doubt.
Nobody can say that we paid his tuition because he's dead. Okay, so you guys paid his tuition. I remember sitting there getting upset, but wanting to make sure I maintain my composure. I remember getting nervous because I realized the damning things that he is saying are now recorded. Coach Bliss wanted R.T. Gwynn, Ellis Kidd, and Harvey Thomas to tell stories about Patrick.
But what we want to do is, Denny tells the story. You know, we've been going up to Dennehy's apartment, and what we've done up there at Dennehy's apartment, you know, we'll go up there and we'll smoke some weed and drink some stuff and have some ladies up there. Then this one time I went up there, okay? This was like the middle of May, and we're up there and we're getting ready to do some shit, and Pat walks in with a tray. All of a sudden on this tray, I noticed some new shit, okay? There's pills, there's, whatever. I'm with you. It was like all kinds of wild shit. They put the tray down, okay? Yeah. When they put the tray down, and Patrick said something like, we're going to have some fun tonight, and we're going to let the other guys pay for it. And he brought out his roll of $100 bills.
I mean, he's dead serious. And you're sitting there, and it's hard not to laugh sometimes about it. And when I tell you I have mixed emotions, it's like, because some of it is like so absurd, it's hilarious. It's like, okay. And then at other times you start thinking about how chilling it all is and sad. And, Patrick's body had just been found.
Patrick Dennehy, privileged black male, former member of the Baylor basketball team down in Waco, Texas. Guess, can I get two? Can I? He getting Gus T feeling good enough. He has recuperated sufficiently to get back on his old black male privilege and caping for privileged black dudes. Can I give shout out to two black males? So we got Patrick Dennehy. Take Jesse Washington too. Can I get Jesse Washington, since we bring up Waco and Baylor, Texas? Jesse Washington, Patrick Dennehy, black male privilege in Texas, Lone Star State. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Monday, August 10, 2026. So I have been told. Gus T still recovering, not 100%, but close enough to be back on the air. Discombobulated our schedule for last week. In fact, so much so, the program that we were supposed to do last Sunday, finally getting back to that, so we'll do that tomorrow. So we'll be back to back today, tomorrow, same broadcast time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. getting it back together to close out the summer of 2026. That being said, we easily could have had two intros to start today's program. For the folks who tune in live, dialing in 720-716-7300, the code 564-943 pound. But for the folks who dial in live, I always have a little bit of audio playing 10-15 minutes before we go live, just so that people know, yep, we are broadcasting and we'll be ready to go at the top of the hour, as was the case today. The audio that I was playing today, it was Neely Fuller Jr. talking about the religion of white supremacy. And I said, oh man, easily could have allowed that to continue playing and being the audio today. And part of the reason that it fit so well for today's topic, that snippet of audio from Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., that was the intro that we used just a few years back when suspected racist J. Russell Hawkins visited with us. We discussed his book, The Bible Told Them So, How Southern Evangelicals Fought to Preserve White Supremacy. Kind of rare to get a book with white supremacy in the title, but that is one. But I will not forget that program anytime soon. Gus T was feeling 100% on that day We got Professor Hawkins, white man, suspected racist, on the program, and that book all about South Carolina specifically. And he talks about how all of these white people, many of them illiterate and poor spellers, wrote in and talk about how they didn't want no count raping beastly niggers in school with their white children and all the rest of it. And they wrote old Strom Thurmond all these letters and gotta stay away from the niggers, they're rapists, and gotta stay away from the niggers, they're rapists. And I said, wait a minute, old J. Russell Hawkins, white man. You done told us all this and detailed information and showed off all these letters and such. You didn't give us one mumbling word about Strom Thurmond being the child rapist here. I mean, at minimum, the racist hypocrisy. You done all these decades of stay away from the niggers, they're rapists, and you raping a black child and produced a child with her? You didn't even include one sentence about that? Were you ignorant about this, Professor Hawkins? He said, oh no, I'm aware. Just didn't make time for it. And I said, man, you should have been excoriated for that. Like, F for the book. Ain't even nothing else to discuss. Like, my God, you got all these people talking about rapists. The rapist is at the center of the book, and this gets right at a tradition of what it means to be white, how white people practice racism, even white lying, and you ain't say nothing about that. And I asked him, I said, has anybody else questioned you about this omission? And he said, no. That was when I said I should have my bicep up. Pow! It's 1-on-1. Gus T. Renegade. So that could have been one intro pick. Cite that because J. Russell Hawkins is mentioned in the book we're talking about today. Also, I saw so many familiar names. The dude, Matthew D. Taylor, also a white man. The violent, take it by force. Remember his visit to the cows? That one, I remember one just because the title stuck out so much. And that book was published right at the end of the election cycle for 2024 when Trump got back in the office and they were giving out pardons and all of that. But that was the environment, January, so that would be January 2025 when we had Dr. Taylor as a guest on the program. The violent, take it by force. And I think we even snuck in a comment on Jim Jones that day. Anyway, those would be two relevant. Go back in the archives, check it out, some of the work that we've done similar to today's subject matter. Also, familiar names that I saw. Whew. We here at the Cows have had a book club for 14 years plus. We've covered lots of material about the system of white supremacy racism. Whew. Learn so reading is more important than watching television. Reading nonfiction, which we've done a heap of. I saw so many names in books that we've covered. I won't read them all, but man, Edward Baptist, The Half Has Never Been Told. I remember that one specifically, also a white dude, that one specifically because the reviews, there were so many white people who were furious because they said, man, this Baptist dude, economist, you done wrote this history book, dense book, full of endnotes and facts and citations. It gives the impression that all white people are racist and participated in enslaving black people. There's a problem. Is that not true? What's the issue? It's that is the issue. I remember it was tons of white people who were furious about that. Caused the real stink. Excellent book. Top 10. Edward Baptist, that's one. Then, whew, Isabel Wilkerson, not Isabel Wilkerson's good book. Isabel Wilkerson, Cased. And that lion high yellow wench, Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow. Now, for more recent Cows listeners, whew, that is two different books. that at different times have each worn the crown of second worst book ever. Meaning, if you want a book to really confound your understanding of white supremacy racism, get Cased. You really want to sound like a moron talking about racism and be stupid? Michelle Alexander. And that one, this isn't you like tomatoes and I like potatoes. No. These books are not accurate according to the authors. Michelle Alexander got a 2010 version of New Jim Crow, a 2020 version of New Jim Crow. They're all equally whack, lame, and inaccurate. But the differences and edits let you know you can't even stand on this because it's so inaccurate. Anyway, my cackles forever. I look at anyone with suspicion. They reference those books and they tell me they're talking seriously about racism. And my last interesting note, pattern with this text that we're going to talk about today. And I already told you two authors, or I guess several, that are cited, but the pattern with non-white authors cited in this here book. Isabel Wilkerson, Michelle Alexander, Frederick Douglass, James Baldwin, Ijeoma Oluwa, Lorraine Hansberry, Barack Obama, Henry Skip Gates. Now, these folks, some of them Ivy League scholars, former president, really respected folks, more so than Gus T. Renegade, but there is cowbell galore amongst these authors. Isabel Wilkerson, married to a white man. Michelle Alexander, with a white mother who she says is a victim of racism. Lorraine Hansberry, married a white man. Skip Lewis Gates, married to a white woman. Frederick Douglass, even married a white woman. Like, it's pretty substantial. That sort of thing sticks out to me as well. Almost for non-white authors to have credibility talking about racism, they have to be in bed with a white person, have a white parent, maybe both. I don't know. Anyhoodles, our guest for today, citing all of these books, fascinating title, White Lies, Dismantling 10 Cultural Myths About Race. Can only say lies and myths are not the same, unless I have been misinformed. In addition to writing that text, White Lies, which is brand new, just came out this year, he's a professor at the aforementioned Baylor University in Texas, where he manages to talk about film, literature, issues of racism, white supremacy from time to time. Looking forward to examining his book today. Joining us live, our guest, Greg Garrett. Let's see. Mr. Garrett, are you with us, sir?
Good. How are you feeling, man?
I am about 90%, but hanging in. Hopped out of the sick bed. I got my kombucha. I'm hydrated and ready to roll. Thank you, kindly. Even got my tissue, so I'm super ready to roll.
All right. Well, I'm ready to roll with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
For sure, for sure. For listeners who might not know, maybe they have not heard about your book, White Lies, and other contributions that you've made, anything you'd like to share with listeners about who you are and the work that you do briefly before we hop into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a professor at Baylor University, a critic and cultural theologian. And for some years, my work is largely centered around white supremacy and white Christian nationalism. And this is my most recent book from Oxford University Press. I guess, like, recently also a book about James Baldwin from the Great Liberation Theology publisher Orbis Books, and a previous book from Oxford about racism in Hollywood.
Much obliged. All of your interests kind of converge in this book. You get a little bit in about film and literature and all the politics, religion, all areas of people activity pretty much. For folks who have not seen you, you are, it said in the book, but you're classified as a white man. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am just like total straight white guy, straight white Christian. And like that's one of the reasons that I feel most strongly drawn to speak out against these hateful and loud white Christian nationalists, because I do not like them hijacking my faith or our democracy.
Interesting. We will unpack some of that from the text as we proceed. We start with all of our guests. You've already mentioned, you talk about white supremacy. I use the term white supremacy and the term racism as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition, a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think such a system exists? Do you think that definition is accurate?
Yeah, but I would expand it to include women, to include LGBTQ people. This iteration of white Christian nationalism that's supported by the Trump administration is basically anybody who doesn't look or identify like I do. They want to keep in their very specific place. So, I think about hierarchy here. Van Newkirk from The Atlantic.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Since we're going off to quote other folks here, I want to even pause right there just because what you said is substantial enough. That is not a yes. Okay, so I want to be very explicit. That's not what I said. I did not say all these LGBTQ and all of that. Frankly, I think that might be a lie. We're talking about white lies. I think that might be a lie number. You can put a counter on it for people as we go, because I suspect there could be many, but I want to be definitive. That is not what I'm saying. So if that's what you think, the answer would be no. That is not a correct. I do not agree. I do not think that that is an accurate definition of racism. If you're going to add all that LGBT, because I'm saying absolutely not. No.
Yes, I'm not saying that that's racism, but I'm saying it's part of it.
I'm saying no, and I'm saying absolutely not. That is not a part of the definition. So if you have to add that on as an addendum, the answer is no. You do not think that this is an accurate definition.
Yeah, that's not what I said either. But go right ahead.
Did you not say that the LGBTQ and women and all that is a part of it? Is that not what you said?
I said that everybody who doesn't look like me is diminished by white Christian nationalists. And clearly that does not define racism, but it defines injustice. And
okay, let's pause right there. I'm going to have to make a request, Mr. Garrett. Please just answer the question that is given before we deviate, because that's one of the ways. Your book is White Lies, and you said that you're a white man. Is it logical for me to suspect that you could be a racist?
Well, Gus, why did you have me on if you thought that that was true?
Because I talk to white people who practice racism all the time. It's very instructive. I try to learn.
Yeah.
Can we get back to, there we go. So I just asked. So can you answer the questions that are asked? The question was, is it logical for me to suspect that you as a white man could be racist?
Sure.
Thank you. Now let's get back to the definition. I have nothing. I said nothing about adding parts and all of that. I asked if the definition was accurate. Now, if you have to make those massive additions, we have a different definition, and that's fine. That's totally fine, but we just need to make sure that we understand that so we're not proceeding saying the same thing. Definitively, I am not saying that racism, white supremacy is about white people like you, white men. Not at all. I say all the time, if you're classified as white, it doesn't matter if you're elderly, LGBTQ, woman, child, doesn't matter. You're classified as white. Pow! You are a part of the white race. benefiting, practicing racism, white supremacy. That is what I'm saying. Now, if you have a different conception, just make sure that we understand that moving forward. So do I need to give you my definition again to see, is it accurate, or do you need to just go ahead? No, because you have a different framework.
Thank you. I agree with you that definition of racism is true. I think that what we might want to also ask is, are there white people who are trying to be anti-racism? And that's where I would want to define myself, and that's where my work for the last 10 years has been. But, I mean, go on.
Were you talking to us or somebody?
No, good.
Oh.
I'm alone in the house.
Oh, okay.
Happy to be here with you. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okie doke. All right. We got the definition point. That is major suspicion right there. Could be an act of racism from Mr. Garrett. The other component, that is a pattern that I've known it, and that could be, so if you all are keeping track, that could be racist lie number 2, the whole anti-racist and all of that. We still have a system of white supremacy racism. I think it is massively incorrect, illogical to start, particularly for people who are suspected racists at minimum, to begin labeling themselves as anti-racist. I think that is massively correct. I think that is anti-historical. The record bears this out. Until we've solved this problem, we don't hand out those titles. It should just be, hey, we have a hard enough time identifying white people who practice racism. Let racist suspect at minimum, and then we'll proceed to solving this problem. Now, let's see. Did you go to church this past weekend, Mr. Garrett?
You know, I actually did not. I had to go up to Baylor and pick up some stuff for a class I'm going to teach in New Mexico this week.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah, but most Sundays, yes. I'm at St. James Episcopal Church, which is a historically black church in East Austin. It's the church that rescued me at the darkest moment of my life, and the one place in my constellation where I can walk in and hear a justice sermon that doesn't try and make white people feel better.
Fascinating. How long have you been attending this historically black church in Austin?
Since about 2001, 2002.
Wow.
So they sent me to seminary. I was training to be an Episcopal priest. I was not invited by my bishop into that vocation. But it, that formal training in theology was a life-shifting thing for me. And St. James lifted me up for that, and I remember when the priest in the church said, "We think that you're supposed to go to seminary," and I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And it turned out not to be, because what we believe in my tradition is that you discern in community. So we're actually doing the book launch for White Lies at St. James in a few weeks, and I'm super excited about that here in Austin.
At least I have been told, I have not visited Austin, but I've been told, this is an area that there's lots of so-called racial dislocation, i.e. white gentrification, where they have prices and all the rest of it cause lots of black people where they can no longer afford to be in the area. So if that's true, if this is a historically black church, does the church show evidence of this invasion of white folks into Austin?
Oh, Gus, it absolutely does. My dear friend Ora Houston, who's a former city councilwoman, is still just so crazy pissed off. We had a church that was closer to Central Austin, and we ended up sort of having to move out into further East Austin. And this will not surprise you at all because, I talk about this in the book, but, during the 50s and 60s, interstate highways divided up and often rolled through black and brown neighborhoods. And so I-35, which runs from Mexico to Minnesota, is the dividing point for Austin and used to be the racial dividing point. But now, as you say, it's like crazy gentrified. You walk, like 5-7 blocks across from the interstate to the east, and there's a Whole Foods. And so many of my fellow parishioners have been priced out of their homes, and just in terms of Austin being one of the most expensive places to live in Texas, priced out of their property taxes. They couldn't, continue to live where they are. So yeah, you are absolutely right. This is one of, and not the only, but one of the many really powerful examples of gentrification, even in a place that, like Austin, thinks of itself as being super progressive.
Anti-racist, dare I say. Much obliged for the detail, context of white supremacy. Wow, that was... Anyway, have to pause on that later. Who was since you said they're about to do the book launch at the, or I guess let me get one more. Your friend who is very upset about all of these racist white people coming into the town and I guess even coming into the church and such. Does she suspect that you could be racist?
I think she would look at every white person and ask that question. But I've been in a relationship with her for 25 years. Wow. So I hope she would see me as somebody who loves and respects her and sees her or tries to see her. Gus, I'm leaning into your question about racism because I believe that every white person has to reckon with that. So I'm going to sit with that, and it's not an unwelcome suggestion.
Okay. Context of what? 25 years. That's a long time. That is a long time. Has she ever pointed out and said, "Hey, Mr. Garrett," or maybe Greg at this point after all these years? Hey, Greg.
It is definitely Greg at this point.
Okay.
And Miss Aura to her, but.
Got it. So does Miss Aura, has she ever at any point said, "Hey, Greg, I think what you just did, that was racist"? Like, come on, dude, has that ever happened over the 25 years that you've known her?
No, it has not.
Okay. Maybe she doesn't think you're a racist or hasn't said it openly. The book launch, you said you're all about to have it at the church coming up in a few days, I guess, close out the summer with a bang. Who was the audience for White Lies, Dismantling 10 Cultural Myths About Race? Like when you sat down to write this, was this for your church? Was this for people at large? Was it just for white people? Who did you have in mind was going to sit down to read this?
Oh, Gus, that is such a good question. I wanted to write it for white people who would be what Dr. King called people of good conscience, because there are a lot of white people who, when they see this title and they see this book on the socials or whatever, they push back with some vehemence. But I also wanted to write it for people of color so that they would see themselves reflected. One of my black pastor friends here in Austin, we have lunch in a Mexican restaurant pretty regularly, and he will do this thing where we're sitting there and the waiter will do a thing and he'll say, "Did you see that?" And of course the answer that he's looking for is, "Yes, I did see that." Like, he didn't look you in the eyes. He looked to me first. He wanted me to do the order. And I hope that in addition to white people of good conscience who might be willing to address some of these really kind of hateful racial myths, it would also be just a confirmation, not that anybody needs this, but there are people who see what's happening, and you're not crazy. These things have always been at the heart of racism in America. And so if you feel this on a daily basis, I mean, like, this is absolutely true.
Interesting. Was there a specific problem that you were trying to help solve by writing White Lies?
Well, you know, when I wrote this book about racism in Hollywood, that came out in 2020, it's called A Long, Long Way. And some of the folks that I collaborated with for some of the film festivals that we did around race at different places around the country, all of these racist myths about black characters in Hollywood films showed up with some regularity. And Kelly Brown Douglas, the great liberation theologian, black womanist theologian, used to ask me, Greg, why did a white audience need this? And her question was getting to the heart of these myths. What was it that it confirmed for them about their whiteness and the contrast with people who are not? And what comfort or privilege or power did they get from the ways that these stories, you know, whether we're talking about Birth of a Nation or Gone with the Wind or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, what did those things confirm for them that made them feel comfortable in their own whiteness?
Did you answer the question, or that sounded rhetorical?
No, it was never rhetorical, because like she would turn to me, and I mean, and Gus, this is every room that Kelly walks into. She is the smartest person in that room, and I am like well aware that any room that I'm in with her, I'm the second or seventh or 18th most intelligent person in the room. But what she was always asking me, just in terms of my work, like looking at literature and culture, was, you know, what's being manifested here? What is this lifting up for white audiences? And, I mean, we found those answers over and over again in the programs we've done together over the years. It was almost always confirmation. And many of the myths that I write about in the book are myths that Hollywood films have put out in front of people. And even when Hollywood felt that they were being progressive, as I'm sure the white director and writer of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner felt when they were writing in 1967, it's not. And the other question that she asked me, which I think is an essential one, when we look at films, culture, story, and, you know, almost everything else that I write about in the book, Kelly would say, what should we celebrate and what should we lament? And, I mean, the toll of lament is always so much longer than the tiny, you know, kind of check marks that we can make about celebration in terms of how race has been talked about in our culture. But I continue to lean into that. What do we celebrate? What do we lament? And particularly when I think about reaching out to white audiences, that question of lament is the thing that I think most white people in America don't want to deal with. It feels painful to them. It feels what James Baldwin talked about it in throughout his work, but he said, you know, if white people acknowledge the reality of what has happened in this country, what they have done in this country, then they would either have to change or, you know, it would madden them. So
fascinating. I'm just pointing out for listeners, one, because I despise when white people cite James Baldwin, and you quote James Baldwin a lot in your book. I'll even give the detail for non-white listeners, victims of racism. I've never heard a white person quote or use James Baldwin's work constructively. In fact, I've noted this fits that pattern where white people, racists, I think they often deliberately, they will quote non-white people speaking about racism where they're talking inaccurately. And you can't even refute anything because it's a revered black person like Frederick Douglass or James Baldwin or Harriet Tubman or Dr. King. It'll be, just pick a non-white, Frantz Fanon is another popular one, but it'll be something that's in error, but they'll quote them. So you can't really like, oh my God, what are you saying about James Baldwin? And I'm just saying categorically, I'm totally done. 2026. I would appreciate it if white people never quote James Baldwin again. I think they just use his quotes to practice racism and confuse us. I'm pointing out for listeners, my question was specifically about what problem you were trying to address in this book, White Lies, and you cited two black people and their different ruminations on white people and racism and all of this, particularly James Baldwin. I don't think he grasped this problem at all. If he did, white people wouldn't quote him so much. Moving forward, since you talked about Hollywood and the reification and all that, one of the ways that I've noted that racism, white supremacy is reified, transported across miles, geographic locations, generations, racist jokes. That's even a big part of Birth of a Nation and some of the other classics. You as a white man, you talk about your experiences being awed at Stone Mountain and then your time in the OK State. I'm sure you've heard boatloads of racist jokes in your time on the planet, Mr. Garrett. Is that true?
Well, not in recent years, because people know that that's not something that I would want to enter into my ears. But I did grow up in the Deep South, and just to offer my own clarification, when I saw Stone Mountain, I was maybe 8 years old. So that puts it 50-some years ago, almost 60. But one of the things that I think is important, just to kind of expand on what you were saying, is that people who grow up in the Deep South are afflicted by this myth that I write about.
Before we get to the myth, yeah, that's one right there. I have a lot of questions, and you're deviating. I want to get back to the racist jokes, and I even want to point that out for listeners. The backpedaling, I didn't say if you've heard them recently. I didn't ask if you heard a racist joke today. I just said, I'm sure, particularly as a white man in your 50s, you've heard a number of, like, not one, not 20. You've heard a number of racist jokes in your time on the planet. Is that true?
Gus, I am 65 years old, and I have not heard a racist joke for 30 years. I think this could be a deliberate act of racism because I really didn't ask the last time. I didn't say anything relating to time. I just said you've heard more than 10 racist jokes. Is that true? That's a yes/no question. Yes? No, that's an absolute yes.
Thank you. So that's what I'm saying. You're wasting time deviating to quote James Baldwin and all this other stuff, which I view as deliberate acts of racism. Just get to the point. Now, can you remember just one out of these many racist jokes that you've heard, understood? It wasn't today. It wasn't in the last 10, 15, whatever, many years. Can you remember one of the racist jokes that you've heard in your life?
No, I honestly cannot.
Pattern, we've heard that amongst non-white people white people consistently as well, where, oh yeah, we've even heard white people like yourself, where it's not that they heard one racist joke. We've heard some who said, I heard thousands of them. Grew up in Georgia and Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma and in the North, wherever. I heard thousands. Michigan, heard thousands of them. Can you remember one? No.
Yeah,
consistent.
I can remember some really racist statements that people in my family have said.
About black people?
Yeah.
What'd they say?
Oh, well, my mom and my grandma on my dad's side were people who grew up in Oklahoma, and they believed that mixed race marriage was maybe the most dangerous thing or the most sinful thing they'd ever encountered. And, so they would say hateful things around that. This white girl married this black boy. And, the hatefulness around that is something that I do remember.
Were they talking bad about the white girl, or was it directed, like, who was the transgressor in these tragic arrangements, the white girl or the black boy, or both equally?
Oh, Gus, it was totally the white girl.
Oh.
Because she was fallen, right? We all know that this miscegenation myth is one of the things that's the greatest sins that white supremacists reflect on. And so for my mom, my grandmothers, it felt like there was an indecency to them. It's not a thing that I feel, but they expressed themselves often when I was young.
Fascinating. That's important, because I even had that question down, because your book focuses so much on even some of your commentary already, where you said it's about white men and people who don't look like me, and had to say flagrantly, hey, you can't have a system of white supremacy racism without his white grandmother, his white mother. Totally impossible. Even in the book, you mentioned your former mother-in-law and her shopping addiction for the Gone with the Wind memorabilia. And you said, you know, I'm not saying that she's particularly racist, but hey, the facts is the facts. And she did have this penchant for buying up all this Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind memorabilia. Is this true? Am I remembering it correctly?
No, you remember correctly, and you were right on.
Okay. And I had a whole little list here of white women. You got to have Scarlett O'Hara. You got to have Carolyn Bryant Dunham, who you mentioned in the book. You have to have white women, or you do not have a system of white supremacy racism. And again, that hypocrisy. I remember that from Texas, the Houston area, where he talked about his mom and grandmother, the outrage about this white girl who got, I guess, married a black boy or whatever, sexual arrangement with a black dude. We heard white authors talking about just down the road in Houston, really same time period, 20th century, all of the white moral outrage, the Negro whorehouses. They couldn't keep the white men out. Maybe his grandfather. They couldn't keep the white men out. And they said, oh my God, we got to get these Negroes out. I said, wait, I thought separation and segregation. Strom Thurmond, Thomas Jefferson. He did mention all that Thomas Jefferson in the book, and I didn't hear Sally Hemings' name one time. Did I mention? Do you know who Sally Hemings is, Mr. Garrett?
Gus, give me some credit. And
okay.
If you look on pages 168 and 69, you will find her represented.
Okay, thank you. I'll apologize. I was wrong. Thank you. I was reading so early. Oh, you did mention Annette Gordon Reed. But man, that's kind of, let me make sure I'm pulling up so I can read exactly where we are here. Okay, gotcha. Slaveholders sometimes, I'm on bottom of 168, last paragraph. Slaveholders sometimes spoke about good, my confusion, he deliberately doesn't use the word Negro in the book, and he explains all that at the beginning. I obviously don't have that policy, so my consternation about the good Negro, a house slave or field hand who could be relied upon and even perhaps with whom a white owner or employer might enter in some species of relationship. We know, for example, that Sally Hemings, whom while being 3/4 white was considered black and property, and the property of Thomas Jefferson, negotiated with Jefferson on at least one occasion on what feels something like equal foot. What?
Yes, they were in Paris. Slavery
Lord.
was illegal in France. She was a free person, and he wanted to bring her back to Virginia.
We have a global. Go ahead and finish.
No, that's it. Like, they negotiated. She said, if you will free me and my kids, I will come back with you. That was her negotiation. She was free in Paris.
on equal footing.
Yeah, maybe not equal footing.
And wait a minute, even pause. This, like I said, for people who are keeping track for the lies, add this one. Now, Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, the same thing that I pointed out with your homie, J. Russell Hawkins, Strom Thurmond is a child rapist. That's just the facts. That's not my perspective. I'm just looking at the data. Child rapist. Thomas Jefferson is a child rapist. I'm just looking at the data and the massive age differential between Sally Hemings, Thomas Jefferson. Is this accurate just going by the data?
Yeah, I think so.
How in the world would they be on equal footing? And we have a global system of white supremacy racism. It's not like we can go to Australia and, hey, black people are just beloved in Australia, or we can step off and go to France. Black, we just love us some Toussaint in France, then or now. Or you insert whatever other part of the globe that you would like. But I mean, equal footing?
Yeah. I was trying to give her some agency. If I was wrong, then I apologize.
Inaccurate. That's the sort. The book is White Lies. That's the sort. That's exactly what I pointed out with J. Russell Hawkins. White people lie all the time. It's just the different ways that they lie, and these are not myths. This is a lie consistently leaving out. J. Russell, your homie, he didn't even mention Sally Hemings. Like, this is not a Gus messed up and skipped a pair. No, he didn't mention her at all. And we talked about this on the program. He gave his lame explanation as to why, which I said I think that's a deliberate act of racism. Same with you not mentioning that age differential, which white people do like nobody willing to. Hey, this is Robert Jensen is about the only exception to the rule that I can think of. And he says white people get furious with him every time. And he said what I said, like, hey, this is not a personal attack. I'm just looking at the debt. Like, if this happened now, Jeffrey Epstein, he should be going to prison, right? Yeah. If it was your daughter, he'd be going to prison, period. And he said white people refuse, and they lie and just don't bring that up. And the pattern of this conduct, like I said, Strom Thurmond, we don't have to go dig back in Thomas Jefferson time. Strom Thurmond was Strom Thurmond was here when you were here. Yes, you remember Strom Thurmond when he was still alive and serving as a elected, powerful official. Yes,
he was still alive. Yeah.
Did you read Essie Mae's book, Dear Senator?
No, I haven't.
You should add that one to the list, sir. Maybe even with your class, you all can talk about that one and what she has to say about old child raping Strom Thurmond. But the title, if I can go back real quick, White Lies, Dismantling 10 Cultural Myths About Race. I even want to point that one out as another one at the end. Mr. Fuller said this for decades. The problem is white supremacy, racism, not race. And I think many times white people deliberately, they lie, they obfuscate, they don't say racism, white supremacy, they're race. The only reason that you have race is to practice racism. But specifically with the title, thank you for the confirmation. Specifically with the title, you got White Lies, main title, and then the subtitle, the Dismantling 10 Cultural Myths About Racism. I said, it nagged with me. It sat on my brain. Lies are not the same things as myths. Is that your understanding, Mr. Garrett?
Well, Gus, if I could expand on your question, which I am answering, myths are how people build systems to live in the world. And myths can absolutely be lies, as every one of the myths about race that I write about in this book are lies. These are things that people who look like me have said to make themselves feel better about themselves and to absolve themselves from their racism. So, myth for me is a meaning-making construct, but all of the 10 myths that I write about in this book are lies.
Even the way when you gave your explanation just now that these 10 myths specifically that you talk about in your book, White Lies, that these are all lies, but myths are not necessarily lies. That's back to my question. Lies and myths are not the same thing, which you seem to reaffirm in your answer. I did, even when I did the word count, because I have the e-version of your book, the word myth is in the book 439 times. The word lie is in the book 393 times. I said, man, the title of the book is White Lies. I mean, myth sounds much more noble, as you just explained. Like, this is something that helps you make sense of the world and add meaning. Might not even be a lie, according to what you just said. These myths are lies, but they might not necessarily be a lie. And I don't think everyone, because they are not the same, I don't think most people connote myth with lie necessarily. I think it is massively, because white people consistently find ways of minimizing their deception to practice white supremacy. They'll say even white lies. That in and of itself is one of their euphemisms of, well, we're just fudging a little bit. We're not really lying. These are, soft and innocent, that one, and just not saying. Even I've asked some of our guests, are we saying that white people are lying? There seems to be a reluctance to just, white people lie a lot, not admitting that Thomas Jefferson is a child rapist. Having this big conversation. Matter of fact, one of the big lies, white people are ignorant about racism. That is a massive lie. And I think it is way more important for that to be labeled as such than a myth, because this is a deliberate act to deceive someone in a harmful manner. That's what white people do collectively. Matter of fact, we can get white people being ignorant about racism. I'm saying that is one of the biggest lies in the world. What do you think, Mr. Garrett?
Okay, so Gus, let me be clear. I think what you're asking me about is, are white people aware of their racism? I mean, is that the question?
I'll explain it. When I say that is one of the greatest lies in the world, that white people are ignorant about racism, I mean, like when you mentioned your pal before and saying that she's the smartest person in the room, or saying that white people need a book like this or some other sort of book, or that you didn't know anything about the Tulsa massacre in Oklahoma, even though you have roots and connections to that area. You didn't know any details about it until later in life. Wow, I'm reading about it. I am humbly submitting white people cannot be ignorant about what racism is and how it works. Your mom and grandmother would not allow you to be ignorant about racism. You just told us. They talked bad about black people all the time. And in fact, they talked bad about white people who broke the rules about racism. You already told us. Mess around and marry a colored boy. Oh. And it's tons of illustrations of that. If you are, and it's not tons, I'll retract, but white people will let you know if you are ignorant about the rules of practicing racism. That's what I mean, that is a gigantic lie, that this problem, racism, has continued because white people, they don't understand what racism is, how it works. That's a lie. People like you, Mr. Garrett, you are very intelligent about what white supremacy racism is and how it works. That's what I mean when I ask my question. Do you understand now, sir?
Yeah, I think I do. But I think that what I would say is that white people do not want to know about it or think about it, even though it is omnipresent and right there in front of us. And because you've already insulted me for loving James Baldwin, I won't bring in James Baldwin here. But it is very clear that white people have expressed who they are by building myths about who black people are. And You can either deal with that or you can ignore it. You can roll over and go back to sleep. And that is, I think, what a whole lot of white people do.
Metaphor for listeners, and that's one of their old and tired metaphors because it suggests passivity. That's one of their favorites, the passivity, that they just go to sleep and they wake up and the little white privilege fairy comes by and sprinkles a little fairy dust on them and puts a little few dollars in their back pocket of white privilege. And, oh, where did this come from? The white privilege. That is all a massive lie. Even, in fact, when he started, he said that white people don't want to think about racism. That is a lie. Number one, we can just listen to what Mr. Garrett told us today about his own lived experience. He said, and during his formative years especially, he said he heard all kinds of racist jokes. He went to Stone Mountain, Georgia, and was awed by the display of white supremacy. He heard from his very mother and white grandmother, this is what is expected of white women. Hang on. This is what is expected of white people. He was told deliberately, and he didn't say at any one of those points, man, my mom was always so pained. She used to, I hate even bringing up that no-count, low white woman loving a Negra and having to talk bad about her, but I just want to make sure that he didn't say it was explained that way. He just said that they groused and complained and groused about her violating white womanhood. Same thing for Stone Mountain. It wasn't anguish and we got to go see all this white supremacy on it. That wasn't what it was. The racist jokes, that alone. He didn't say it was one racist joke. I said, because you've heard bunches of these. He kept backpedaling. It's been 30 years, not today. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, I've heard bunches of these. That right, birth of a nation. You can just go on and on and on. White people do not feel bad about talking about racism. The reason, just based on logic, the reason we haven't solved this problem is not white. And this gets to the crux of it, because the reason, the explanation becomes, we haven't ended racism because white people are ignorant. They stay asleep. Wrong. The reason we haven't ended white supremacy racism is because white people are dedicated to practicing racism. That's why all the racist jokes, that's why Birth of a Nation is still on play, and all the other iterations of white supremacy. White people are dedicated to this. That makes way more sense, is true, as opposed to they're ignorant, they don't understand. If they just get the correct book, they will wake up and stop mistreating black people. That is absolute nonsense of the greatest order. Am I being logical, Mr. Garrett, or I'm talking wild? We need to get James Baldwin back to explain?
No, we don't need to get James Baldwin back to explain. Gus, I'm not sure why you asked me on tonight, but, I am happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability.
Well, please do so, because I just asked you a question about white people being ignorant, and I say this is important because I say this is a massive lie. Let's do the simple one. You are not ignorant about racism. You're very informed about white supremacy racism as a system. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. You are indicative of most, and it's not like you're a Rhodes Scholar. I didn't read did you teach at Oxford or something? You said yourself, I'm like the 7th smartest white man in the room or whatever. So it's not like we're talking to, the valedictorian at Oxford or Harvard. Is that you?
Yeah, Gus, I've written 30 books, and I have taught at Oxford.
Okay, thank you for setting the record straight. Are you valedictorian?
Oh, no. I wasn't even salutatorian. I had a 3.76 grade point. So, am I stupid, Gus? Is that your point? Or am I... Again, I'm not sure why you asked me on.
Discuss white supremacy racism with the people who are informed. I didn't say you were stupid. I repeated what you told us earlier. You said you had that black female in the room, and I'm not the smartest person here. I'm the 2nd, 7th. That's what you told us before. I'm repeating exactly what you said. So according to your testimony, you didn't tell us I'm the super smart white person. Okay, you're still smart about racism. You're still smart about the system of white supremacy racism. I didn't say you were stupid at all. And in fact,
No.
I'm saying that white people collectively are not stupid about racism. They're not asleep, and they don't need a book by James Baldwin or anyone else. What I'm saying is white people, I suspect like Mr. Garrett, they are dedicated to practicing white supremacy racism, and a massive part of how they maintain the system is lying, being very deceptive with words. And I think some of that has been on display. That's why I want to talk to Mr. Garrett. White people are the experts. This is who we should talk to about racism. And I already asked you before. I said, hey, we should be suspicious of you. You are a white man, so you're probably racist. That's logical thinking. I already asked you, and you said yes. Asking questions and evaluating what you say. That's why we asked you. I've been doing such, going right through the book as well. Let's see. The question specific, next one, because I have a bunch of these. I have my own list of massive lies that white people tell. Next one, based on what separation. That's one of the big ones that you talk about in the book. You mentioned James Lowen's book, Sundown Towns. That's one from our book club too, Sundown Towns, Racially Restricted Regions. I pointed this out just for the logic. You cannot have a system of white supremacy racism if white people and non-white people are so-called separate. That if that were the case, Sally Hemings would have a lot fewer problems. Strom Thurmond would not be a child rapist. There would not have been your white grandmother and white mom would not have been giving all their racist rants about this white woman marrying a black dude. That would not have been necessary because we have so-called separate. Man, that's even in James Lowen's book. He talks about it where they have so-called sundown towns and they have nigger town. Remember that? Africaville, where they would put the black people over in a little, ghetto space or whatever. But they would put the vice, the whorehouses, whatever else, they would put that there. The white people would freely go and partake of that all the time. Minister Malcolm talked about that. That was his job as Detroit Red before he transitioned El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz. That's why I said this. Are you familiar with the term slumming?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and that's black people doing what I just said. White people doing what I just said. Minister Malcolm going to areas where black people like dance clubs and things like that. Ooh, we gonna go watch the Negro, or we might even go dance with the niggers, that sort of thing. That's your understanding of the term too?
Yeah, that's absolutely my understanding.
Okay. And I'm pointing all of this out. I hope that wasn't exasperation. What is he talking? I'm talking about all this because I'm saying there is no so-called separation, Obama. There is no so-called separation. There is white domination, white power. We go wherever we want to, do whatever we want when we feel like it. If there was separation, it would just be what you said. Hey, black people, we go stay on our side of town. You even said the church is not separate. White people came and took over the church, isn't it? Isn't that true?
No, actually, it's not. You're talking about my church?
Yes, where you got the scholarship, they paid your tuition for you to go to seminary?
No, I didn't get a scholarship to pay for seminary.
Did they?
I paid for seminary.
Did you say that they wanted to contribute financially to you going to the seminary?
No, I did not. I said they sent me.
They didn't give any financial contribution?
No, they did not. In the Episcopal tradition, people are lifted up by their communities. I was raised Southern Baptist, crazy white Southern Baptist, where anybody who gets, struck by lightning in a field can decide that they're supposed to be a pastor, and a church can say yes. The true story is that years and years ago, when white people and Asian people and gay people started coming to St. James, the founders of the church got together and had a meeting. And they said, we know what it feels like to be excluded, and God forgive us if anybody ever feels excluded from this space. And that was my experience of welcome in that space. It's still a really strongly multicultural, multiracial place. white people have not taken over my church.
I'm just making sure I grasp. You said that white people, Asian people, so-called LGBTQ people, which might be a double dip for white people, because I'm sure some of those LGBTQ were people classified as white as well. I'm sure they weren't all non-white people, but whatever.
Good. I'll grant you that, Gus. Fine.
Right on. That's nothing spectacular, but thank you kindly. So these people come in to a historically, but what's the demographics of the church St. James now? 2026, to the best of your, is it, you think it's 80% black, 70% black? What do you think?
Yeah. As I look around on a Sunday morning, probably 60% black, 10% Asian, 20% Hispanic, and the rest white.
Asian. So is that about 10% white people? Make sure my math is.
No, it's probably more than that, but
20%.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was a church that was historically black for years. We probably didn't have any black people for decades. Now. I think that's an invasion. If we disagree there, no problem. But I think that's an invasion. I said take over either one. Take your pick. Racial dislocation, and white people invaded the town as well to go from 0 to 20%. Yikes. But they sent him. My whole point, white people there is no so-called separation. White people go wherever they want. Are you aware of examples in Austin where there were historically white churches where now black people represent like 20-30% of the congregation?
Yes, you know full well that's not a possibility. That's not.
I'm just asking. I messed up on Sally Hemings. I was giving you the opportunity to hammer and give me another one. That's what I'm saying, as it is incorrect to say that is separation when the long history is, and white people brag about this. White people brag about Sally Hemings, Strom Thurmond. We're reading Robert F. Williams right now. He said that white people in the Carolinas, right down the road from Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms' neck of the woods, he said they used to come in the black part of town and brag about raping black females, brag about doing this. That's not ignorance. That's not separation. That is white domination, which is what we have, not so-called separation. And it's been my experience, white people use the lie of separation to then say, well, the reason that racism, white supremacy continues is not because people like Mr. Garrett are dedicated to practicing racism. It continues because white people are ignorant about black people. We don't really know each other. We have all of that. We had plantation slavery here for centuries where you're on the same plantation being raped by Thomas Jefferson. You know all about these folks. You done inspected their teeth, rectum, scars, all of that. This is not a problem of ignorance. This is a problem of white people being dedicated to practicing racism. Oh my goodness. One of my other big ones. Not all white people are racist. You started saying that you're anti-racist at the beginning of the broadcast, and I said, hey man, let's not label those folks, if such people even exist, until the problem has been solved. Do you think they're so-called white people who are not racist? Do such people exist?
Yeah, I feel like I've encountered them.
Are you one? Let's talk to you first, and then you can tell us about some of the others too. Are you one? A white person that's not a racist?
Well, Gus, you clearly don't think that I am.
I'm asking your perspective. You can tell us. Do you say, hey, I'm a white person that's not a racist? Is that how you would, tell folks at your church? And
I would say that I am a white person who is trying to fight racism.
That wasn't the question. That's why I said answer the question. So do you consider yourself, I am a white man who is not racist? Would that be a true statement?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Now let's hear about the other folks too.
Well, I teach at a university, and I would expect, I mean, like, this is my workplace. So, you know, this is your workplace. My workplace is a place where we have a whole lot of opinions around a whole lot of things. I think that there are some people in my department who I would think of as not racist, anti-racist, white people who would fit that definition. I can think of a couple who would straight up fit the racist definition. I mean, it feels to me like a kind of cross-section of America. But I would also say that I think many of the other white folks who have either found their way or imposed their way into St. James Episcopal Church are there because they are deeply committed to a course of anti-racism. So, I don't know. Like, I don't. No, go ahead.
I didn't know. I was curious if you were going to add another thought. Before I lose it, that was a curious word choice. You said impose, talking about the white people that you think are sincere, that have come to St. James and they're really interested in replacing white supremacy with justice. Impose, that is a fascinating word choice. Have some of the white people there been accused of, or even is that your conclusion, that they imposed their presence on the church as on a historically black church? Is that what's happened?
No, Gus, I was following up on your comment that white people can go wherever they want.
Okay.
And what I inferred from that was your implication that maybe I imposed myself upon this community that welcomed me.
Wow, that's a lot of assuming. I didn't say. I'm pretty direct. I think if you've seen, I already said I suspect you of being racist. Has another non-white person suspected or accused you of practicing racism before?
Okay. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that real quick?
Yes, sir. I said, has a non-white person accused or suspected you of practicing racism before?
Not in 60 years. I mean, Gus, this will probably startle you, but in most of the communities where I work and with most of the collaborations that I have, I'm actually assumed to be a pretty decent white guy trying to do his best to work for justice and equality.
I'm not surprised about that at all, Mr. Garrett, but thank you for sharing that. I do want to highlight, I'm saying that is one of the major problems, the assumption that and again, now he told us, is it true? I just want to make sure before I finish my point, so you were raised to be a racist white man based on what you told us. Is that true?
No, straight up.
Well, you said no. I just want to make sure I don't get good. You were raised to be a racist white man. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, completely.
Okay.
That was my upbringing.
Okay. For Mr. Garrett to tell us, I believe it 1,000%. He said in the environments that he goes, I assume like St. James, the church, and he told us Miss Aura, that young lady, I guess he's known for 25 years, I think he said, that she has never.
She's not a young lady.
Well, hey, come on. Hey, watch it. Miss Aura, young lady, she has never, he said, hey, watch it, Greg. That sounds kind of racist, and, you're a white man, and I've seen your type before. Never. Now, it could be, a fear thing, maybe. We have been terrorized, Edward Baptist told us, so it might be that she, is a little nervous about doing that sort of thing, but that's what Jeffrey Dahmer, I didn't hear anybody say, oh, yeah, that black and white dude coming in here and talk about he want to get us a drink and other. That's what I hear about white people all the time. Nobody thinks this is even Donald Sterling, once they got the recording, hey, don't you be bringing Magic Johnson and black dudes to my Clippers games. Even then, you got black there. Well, I don't know if he's a racist, That right there, the assumption, the thought process that there are white people who are not racist, that right there is a part of why we have not solved this problem, because it is a massively incorrect understanding of what it means to be white. If I could have been talking to anybody, that would have been a true state. It would have just been to change it. So if I wasn't talking to Mr. Garrett, a white man, if I was talking to a white woman, obviously it sounds like if I had been talking to his white mother, you've been raised to be a racist white woman, and it sounds like you function as a racist white woman. Yes, that would have been true. His grandmother, you've been raised to function like a racist white woman, and it sounds like you function as a racist white woman. True? Yes, that would have been true. LGBT folks, go and ask some of these LGBT folks. I would love to ask some of these white LGBT folks at St. James. You have been raised to function as a racist white transgender, lesbian, gay, whatever. Is that true? Yes. Acting like lesbian white people don't practice racism. Acting like white transgender people don't practice white supremacy. Acting like white gay people don't practice white supremacy, racism. That would be true across the board, and non-white people not thinking that way. All it taking is, oh, and sometimes it wouldn't even be he wrote all these books and did these conferences and all the rest of it. Sometimes it would just be, well, nothing. I've heard that too. We're just, Greg is a good fella. I don't think he's racist. But Jeff Dahmer's a good fella. I don't think he's racist. He came here and bought. I'm serious. You're laughing. Jeff Dahmer exists, right? That's a real person?
Yeah. I mean, I've been called a lot of bad things by people on the other side of this issue. I've never been called Jeffrey Dahmer.
Well, I didn't see you getting the lie in again, because I didn't call you Jeffrey Dahmer, but I am saying it's the exact same pattern where non-white people, we do not think of white people as racist, and then people like yourself, they propagate that lie, not myth, that not all white people are racist, when at minimum we agreed at the very beginning. We didn't agree on that. You didn't think my definition was accurate because I left out the LGBTQ people that are at your church and such.
No, that's not racism. I mean, that's just prejudice. So your definition of racism was strong.
We had disagreement around that for a minute, at least in my recollection, but we had immediate agreement that you said it was logical for me to be suspicious that you as a white person, hey, Mr. Garrett probably racist. That's logical to think that way because we're in a system of white supremacy racism. That is the way that non-white people, victims of racism, should think about every person classified as white until this problem has been solved. Now, is that a logical way to think, Mr. Garrett? What do you think?
Until this problem is solved. I mean, that hurts my heart.
I can't get up. I'm sorry. Woo! Why does that hurt your heart, sir?
Oh, Gus, thank you for asking. Because, we are so far from solving this problem. And, clearly you think of me as a racist. And I am sorry to know that. The 5 years that I spent writing this book were among the most difficult years of my life because it felt like I was descending into hell every chapter, which is, I know what it feels like my friends who are people of color encounter on a daily basis. It's the closest that I've come as a white person to experiencing that, just living back into the history and the reality as a person who is at least the tiniest bit sensitive to pain and injustice in the world. So I don't know. I wrote a book. Maybe it's useful. In your eyes, I don't think it is, and I'm sorry for that. But it was the best effort that I had, and I'm trying to do the best that I can. And that's what I got.
Well, best has not been sufficient if this is the best. The question was, though, because you went to all that, it hurts your heart and all the rest of it. The question, is it logical, hey, until this problem has been solved, you don't get to be an anti-racist. You are a racist suspect until this problem has been solved. Logical, would that make sense? Do you think that would help us make some progress, or just making an assumption that every white person, this is a good dude, Tim McVeigh, Jeff Dahmer, these are all good white, Greg Garrett, these are all good white people, not racist. Which one do you think would be better in terms of just following logic to help us end this problem quickly?
Well, Gus, your logic is, I think, strong. Until this problem is solved, then I think every white person should be viewed with some suspicion. And if that's a helpful way for you to think about it, then that's cool.
Logical. And especially since the way that white people describe this, white people fall asleep. They change their mind. They got some of the white people like you say, oh yeah, Gus, see, I'm an anti-racist. And then you turn around and say, well, you know what? Fighting this racism thing is tired. I'm gonna put this down for a little while and go back and enjoy being white. And I'm gonna catch y'all later. We've had that sort of thing. Whoa, I thought you were supposed to be anti-racist. Wait, we've had lots of that sort of thing. And then turn out and happen that the white person, they really weren't working against racism. They had other objectives and all the rest of it. We have a system of white supremacy racism worldwide. Let's hold off on celebrating any white person until this problem has been. There's a long record of white people tricking. I keep saying, oh, Jeff Dahmer. There's a long record of white people tricking us. Maybe they didn't get to Jeff Dahmer much, all that, but I mean, there is a long record of white people tricking us where we thought, hey, it's a good white. Remember James Byrd Jr.? You talking Texas? We get Milwaukee. Remember James Byrd Jr.?
Of course I do.
Dragged by his white friends. They weren't strangers. These aren't people that he didn't know. You need a ride, James Byrd? Come on. We got you. Come on. And they did the same thing that I said. If this was a problem of separation, they would have left James Byrd alone. And if memory serves, when it was all done, they took James Byrd Jr., privileged black male, they took his corpse to the black cemetery and dumped his remains, urinated on him. If my memory is correct, it has been 30 years, so my memory might be bad. But I think that is what they did. His white friends did to old James Byrd Jr. Again, not separation, white domination. And I suspect James Byrd Jr., he never thought, they're racist. Oh, man, these are my friends. They'll give me a ride home. My friends. Racist suspects. The term, even in the book, and you mentioned it, that was your first response to my definition of white supremacy racism when I asked you when we started out. And you said, people who don't look like you, talking about a white man specifically. You gave your list. You said, if you are a woman, if you're LGBTQ, and I think it might have been some other qualifiers as well. But if you don't look like me, white man, I think you said straight white man, you don't look like me. Oh no, might have a problem with you, might be an issue. And I submit that is another one of the big lies. When I hear people talk about racism, they focus on the man. And I've submitted, your mom, your grandmother, your mother-in-law. These white women are the backbone. Scarlett O'Hara, Carolyn Bryan Donham. I'm sure some white invaders at your church too. These are Harper Lee. I forgot you brought all that To Kill a Mockingbird. These are the backbone of white supremacy. Eula May. I forgot. Get up and get old Tom Robbins lynched. This is the backbone of the first teacher of white supremacy racism. And I consistently, when you talk about not all white people are racist, generally the person that everybody points to, including non-white people, black people, to say that everybody is not racist is white women. And I saw some of that in your text where it's so focused on white men, white men, white men. Don't you think white women also play an important role in maintaining white supremacy, like your mom and grandmother and mother-in-law, your first mother-in-law, former mother-in-law? Sorry.
Yeah. No, of course they do. And I tell a story about being in a church in Louisiana and an older white woman talking to me about, when, I grew up with black people. I never had any trouble with black people, but when will they realize how good they have it? So, there's this very strong sense of the ways that white women have reinforced all of those things.
Do you remember the portion in Michelle Alexander's book, since she quoted her, where she talks, because she has you remember Michelle Alexander has a white mother?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the part in The New Jim Crow, I think it's later on in the book, where she says that white people are victims of racism, and she specifically says that white women, oh my God, she talks about the white woman that your mom and grandmother were disparaging and saying she's a no-count white heifer because she married this black dude. She says that white woman is a victim of racism, like her mother, because of all that sort of vitriol that they experience from white people. Do you think that's true, that a white woman who marries a black dude is a victim of racism?
No.
Because?
Well, in the larger sense, like every one of us is a victim. But, it sounds like she is rationalizing in that space. It's a defense of somebody she loves.
She didn't point out in the text, I raved about this. She does not point out in the context of the book that her mother is white when she gives that, which I thought was even more deceptive, so that readers could be aware of how she is personally implicated in all of this, and that she's making space for her mom, that she's not a racist and she's all right, all the rest of it. And even the white women practicing racism by being in that sort of arrangement with a black person, in my view, that is a maximum act of racist aggression in and of itself. But you have that in the book as well, just making sure listeners heard that white people are also victims of racism.
Well, I'm sorry to say this, but that's what Mr. Baldwin said.
That's a point you agree? You think that's logical, accurate in terms of framing system of white supremacy? White people are also victims?
They're not the victims of everyday racism, but when you dominate somebody else, there's a soul cost to it. And, lots of people have written about that. I don't have to cite Mr. Baldwin. I am well aware that there is a soul cost to what people like me have done. And I don't want that soul cost anymore. I don't want it on my conscience. I want us to do better. I want to be in a different space. So, yeah, they're the people who are damaged by racism daily, and then the people who perpetrate racism, who honestly are damned by it.
Damned by it. I don't know. I don't know. I point out, hey, I've read To Kill a Mockingbird. I think I saw the film rendition of that one as well. And when they have those old court scenes, a la O.J. Simpson, generally you have the perpetrator and you have the defendant. You do not get everybody sitting on the victim of the crime side. Everybody doesn't get to do that. You have clear victim of the crime, clear perpetrator, suspect of the crime. I pointed that out for years. Racism, white supremacy is the only crime I'm aware of where everyone, even the perpetrator, becomes a victim of this crime. I even said with Diddy, if you want to take some of the popular ones who are black people, they do not say that Diddy is also a victim of the baby oil and sexual abuse in that case. I've never heard that. He's only referred to as a perpetrator, as it should be, following logic. That's the opinion that I take. And I say that also because this is another one. If we're all victims of racism, that's another one that kind of erodes what it means to be white, since everybody's a victim of racism. And I have no idea what that even means. It sounds like a metaphor, very similar to white people being asleep, as opposed to it's white people are dedicated to practicing racism, white supremacy. And in fact, I've heard lots of white people, you quote some of them in your book, they say that the sole cost is shacking up with a black person, going to school with a black person. They say that's what the sole cost is if you're classified as white. So at this point, since I haven't seen either one of those so-called sole cost, these are just biblical metaphors and such. We need to get back to literal logic, real world, in my opinion. But you talk a lot about that in your book as well, right? Number of white people saying there's a sole cost for not practicing white supremacy, yes?
White people, black people, I mean, anytime you dominate someone else or diminish somebody else's humanity, you're diminishing your own humanity. But there's a level of consciousness that's required for that recognition that I think a lot of white people don't have. And, I stand by what I wrote.
You didn't answer my question there. I said that you include many white people in your text who write that there is a so-called sole cost for not practicing white supremacy, racism, shacking up with black people and that sort of thing, that also...
I don't ever say that.
You don't say that in the text? I thought you had J. Russell Hawkins. The Bible told us so. I thought that's what they were saying. Am I misreading?
Yeah, I quote him twice in a 400-page book. I mean, like, you walked into this interview to rake me over the coals for having included him because he has some scholarship around how Southern Christians thought that opposing integration was a Christian thing. It's not. I mean, that's the message that I took away from that book, and I apologize if I have in some way offended you for having included him.
I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. The metaphors, you use a lot of metaphors, and then you're going into that white victimization again. I did not call you Jeffrey Dahmer previously, and I have not raked you over where are the coals at? What is going on? Who has a rake? All I said was you did cite J. Russell Hawkins, who I'm familiar with. We did interview him, and the Bible told them so. They use religion to justify the practice of white supremacy, racism, and that theme pops up repeatedly in your work. That's what I said. I don't know if that's raking you over the goal. I'm just stating a fact of what's in the text and the history of what white people have said, done. If you don't practice racism, white manifest destiny, and all the rest of it, you talk about that in the book. If we don't practice white supremacy, racism, this is somehow violating God's law. Many, many white people have said that. Many areas of activity. I'm just stating that's a fact that you touch on in the book, correct?
Yeah, but that's not what I refer to as sole cost.
Right. I'm doing that. I'm saying that's the same thing that I said. That is, white people posit that there is a sole cost for not practicing racism. You're saying that there's a so-called sole cost for practicing racism for white people. I'm saying forget all of that. I don't know what any of that means. I haven't seen so-called sole cost. I don't know a definition. What I know is we have a system of white supremacy racism here. Let's just be logical, skip all the metaphors, and go about solving this problem. That's what I'm saying, as opposed to getting away from the white people are victims as well. That's what I'm saying, getting away, keeping back. Nope. You have people who are dedicated to practicing racism. We could be talking to one now, as opposed to thinking that, oh man, white people are damaged too by all of this. That does not help us at all. And I just, man, all of that faux outrage, like what in the world, like raked over the coals, like that might be another deliberate act of racism, because white people do that sort of thing all the time when nobody has attacked you, nobody called you any names. I'm just trying to go, and you do point these things out in the book. I just made a statement of fact, and for you to get all this, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You break me. What? Are you afraid of black males, Mr. Garrett? You talk about fear of black people. Are you, not even black males, are you afraid of black people, Mr. Garrett?
No, I'm not afraid of black people.
Okay, do you think white people that you've been around, like let's start like your parents and such, do you think they were afraid? Your mom, grandmother, given what they said about this white woman marrying a black person, were they afraid?
I'm pretty confident that they were.
How come? Why do you think so?
Because they didn't have any black acquaintances, black friends, because they said these terrible things about miscegenation. Gus, I'm going to ask us to kind of pull this into the station. Like, we've been on for an hour and a half, and I'm happy to talk with you about this, but I mean, it's pretty clear you don't see any value in the work that I've done or in the work that I'm trying to do outside of this book. And so, again, I'm just sort of wondering why you had me on tonight.
I think I've answered this question before. I'll say it again. Non-white people need to study the problem. White people. I always learn talking to white people, even if they practice racism. And I've told you there have been various times tonight where I thought, oh, I think Mr. Garrett is lying there. I told you from the very beginning, I don't think your book is very helpful at all. You quote lots of non-white people who I think either are very dishonest and or very confused in their understanding of racism. And I've said, I think white people do that deliberately all the time to further confuse our understanding of racism, white supremacy. And when I say our, I mean non-white people. But for non-white people, victims such as myself, I see extraordinary value in talking to white people. I get to ask, when I go back, you said you specifically are not afraid of black people. You said that your mom, grandmother, you think that they were afraid of black people. Is this in Oklahoma or Georgia?
Oh, so my family is from Oklahoma. I grew up, started school in Georgia and North Carolina. And so I was in Charlotte in the Mecklenburg County schools right after those were integrated. And that was formational for me and terrifying for my parents. And so after a couple of years where I'd been in elementary school where black kids were bused across town to my school, going into 5th grade and 6th grade, I was going to be bused across town to their schools. And my family just said, oh, we're out of here. We're going back to Oklahoma. And we're going to move into what I now recognize was a white flight suburb of Oklahoma City. Not a black person, not a brown person, 3,000 very, very white people. And it was a huge change. But
wow, that is okay. Massive act of white supremacy racism, I would say. White flight, that's another one where they minimize euphemistic terms, white flight, white supremacy. And that is the opposite. Sometimes you get the racial dislocation where they all come, I'm using the invade St. James and or Austin and bump all the black people out with property taxes or whatever it is. Other times you get the opposite where we're all leaving, and you have the opposite effect where you really dilapidated area now and you don't have any tax base now. So it's a totally different problem for the black people who remain. They moved all the way from North Carolina, he said, to Oklahoma, into a racially restricted region of Oklahoma as a result of. That's another one where I'm saying white people are not ignorant about racism. It seems like this is a very willful, deliberate, not the black people are going to school with you now? Oh, great. In completely unrelated matters, we're going to move to Oklahoma. No, this was very willful and deliberate. And what did they think was going to happen to you as a result of these black children coming to Mecklenburg County?
That's such a good question. Gus, I don't even know. And, we have never talked about this. My mom and dad split up shortly after we got back to Oklahoma. And we had, our own sets of traumas around that. But it has become more and more clear to me as the years go by that that's exactly what happened. That we left this place where I was in class, in conversation with kids from across town, and they didn't want me to continue in that space, or my brothers, who were in school, coming up. And, when I think about this tiny little, honestly, podunk town that we moved back to in Oklahoma, it was so less interesting, so less culturally rich. But I think my parents thought it was safe for them and whatever stories that they were telling themselves about the world.
And even you can place that in context, the mass resistance at that time. That's in J. Russell Hawkins' book, where we talked about where it was, that's like a whole generation, maybe even 2 generations of that deliberate white disinvestment. We are not going to school. We're not sending our children, white children, to school with black children. That happened all across the continent, not just in the so-called South.
Like freedom academies, all that stuff. But this town in Oklahoma didn't need a freedom academy because
they had no black people. He said sundown town, racially restricted region. Yeah, we don't even have no. And I bet you, now when you moved out to the suburbs of Oklahoma, did you still hear racist jokes while you were out there, Mr. Garrett?
Yeah, probably. Honestly, it is so many years I can't think of anything specific. But yeah, there was a ton of racism.
They talked bad about black people in this town out in Oklahoma where there were no black people.
No.
And he said,
yeah, exactly.
Again, that is not a problem of ignorance. That's what I've been saying the whole time. It's not white ignorance, and it's not even separation. White people, and they probably do the same thing out there in Oklahoma, white people willfully can decide. We want to be around the black people. We'll go in and gentrify the area, or we're going to do it. And sometimes they will do the same. We'll wait 5 years and we'll go over there and gentrify where them niggers at and move them all out. We're tired of it. We'll move back. Whatever they want. System of white supremacy, racism. White people can do whatever they like. As he said before, they don't have the opposite of the black people saying, oh man, these school, or hey, I don't want my child in school with that Garrett dude telling racist jokes and all that. We're out of here. That don't happen. We're going to pack up and go live where all the black people are, and they got the great black schools, and there's 3,000 black people. We tell racist jokes about white people all day long. That don't happen. System of white supremacy. White people like Mr. Garrett. He said he wrote 30 books. Very intelligent about racism. They are the experts. And it's not an issue of separation. It is an issue of white domination. We'll do it. If we want to be around you, we'll be around you. If we don't want you all around, you all will not be around. And that's that. The fear, I guess before we let you enjoy the rest of your Monday, that fear component, that's another one that I say, man, white people are not afraid of black people. Like, I have seen so much evidence, like you said, the white people, this is my word choiceage with your church in Austin, St. James. I'm saying that this is an invasion of white people. If it's 20% approximately or about thereof, I'm saying that is an invasion. That's not fear. I didn't hear you tell, maybe you just didn't share them with us yet. I didn't hear you tell us any stories of the white people saying, hey, Greg, will you come with me to St. James tonight? Because I sure am scared. Miss Osa, she going to, have her person smack me upside the head. Don't you bring any more crackers back to our church. This is St. James. This is a black church. Don't you come in. I didn't hear that at all. I don't know. We can go to that part of town. We got to cross the highway. I haven't heard any of that. slumming. Even Malcolm X didn't say that. The white people, woof, they were scared to come into Harlem, and my goodness, and we're going to need police escort to get in here. And I have never heard white people generally brag about being able to go anywhere in the world. They brag about even going on safari. We go to a different continent, and still, I'll be the only white person there and mess over them all. Get them to come and take me out. We'll hunt lions and tigers and bring them back and hang them on my wall and show everyone the photographs of my great African safari. Whole bit of white culture there doing the safari with the niggers, where it's only one white man for thousands of miles and what have you. I just haven't seen any evidence that white people are like afraid, like legitimate, like they might say, you might get a Trayvon Martin situation. I was afraid and I had to shoot him 1,000 times, that type of thing. But generally speaking, like James Byrd Jr., he was not killed because his white friends were afraid of him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing?
No. What's that last name?
Welsing, W-E-L-S-I-N-G. Yep, W-E-L-S-I-N-G, Welsing.
Okay, got it.
She passed away, but she's a black psychiatrist, and she spent her whole life writing about white supremacy, racism. Her theory is that white people, the fear that white people have, like yourself, is white people's fear of white genetic annihilation, in that what your grandmother and mom said, oh my goodness, white woman is marrying this black boy. All of that is connected to white people. They want more white people, and because they are a minority in terms of population, they fear dark people either having sexual intercourse or by whatever means wiping out the population of people on the planet that would be classified as white. That is their fear. That's why you have all the trepidation about sexual intercourse, Barack Obama, that sort of a thing. That's why you have all the lynching and castrating of black males, focus on black male genitalia, that they could wipe out the white population. Her theory, I was going to say, but I do agree with her. Her theory is that is the legitimate fear that white people around the world have, that fear of genetic domination, since they are a minority population on the planet. Do you think that that could be more accurately at the root of the so-called fear that white people have of dark people?
Well, it's certainly one of those things. You know, people used to talk about the replacement theory. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that fear that white people have about, black people, brown people, immigrants coming in, and not only changing, the cultural, what they understand as the cultural identity of America. It's not, but also, being in the minority. And I mean, I think that's at the heart of a whole lot of things, a whole lot of fears. It's not one of my fears, but that's what underlies the white Christian nationalism that the Trump administration is, enabling. And it's every day there's a person either in the Trump administration or associated with the administration who says a hateful thing about race and replacement that if you had said it 10 years ago, you would have had to disappear from public life forever. And that for me is one of the scariest things about the present moment. But it's also encouraging because, these people are saying the stuff that they used to not say out loud. And, it becomes a whole lot easier to identify some things.
Fascinating. I'm very familiar. He mentions Dylan. It starts the book with Dylan Roof down in South Carolina, and later on Peyton Gendron up in Buffalo, his federal trial coming up, death penalty, hopefully for racist killer in Buffalo. But they both talking about the threat to the white race and various permutations of that replacement theory. All of that, I used Dr. Welsing's verbiage, white genetic annihilation. Even Dylan Roof, he said it exactly. He said, I got to do this because you're raping our women. Exact same fears and frustrations that your white grandmother expressed. I got to do this. And the threat of the black male genitalia, even though he killed black females and males at the church in South Carolina. Incidentally, I did say about Dylann Roof, I thought that was a political assassination because he killed a state senator, State Senator Reverend Clementa Pinckney.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, sound like we got immediate agreement. That's one I've been surprised that most people do not talk about or brand it as such, even though he killed a black elected official in a state with a history of white supremacist violence against black elected officials. That's one I think should be included as well. I guess last one before we let you go, you mentioned the word dignity in the text a few times. It kind of starts at the beginning, and different black people trying to maintain their so-called dignity in the face of white supremacy, racism. What in that context do you mean when you talk about dignity in terms of black people being dignified even though they are still victims of white supremacy? What do you mean in that context about dignity?
Yeah, I think what I meant by that is their recognition of their full humanity. And, in my faith tradition, what we would say is that, every human being is a child of God. And their recognition of that, even when the Christian traditions that were being aimed at them were not reinforcing their dignity as human beings or as children of God, just this recognition. One of the things that I wrote about in the book is this sort of study that although white slaveholders denigrated the humanity of the enslaved people, there was also this very strong recognition from people who bought slaves and sold slaves that their humanity could be used as a weapon against them. To get them to do a thing that they would not normally have done just because they didn't want harm to come to the people that they loved. And so they were actually relying on their humanity at the same time that they were saying that they were inhuman.
I remember one of the novels that you included at the beginning. It was a black male who was going to be executed, much like George Stinney in South Carolina. Yeah. Black male who was going to be executed, and they said he's illiterate, can't read, much like George Stinney in South Carolina. And they say, it'd be the same as executing a hog, if my memory is correct. And said, oh my God, this is terrible, and we want to make sure at least you can educate him so that this is a man. That you see that refrain throughout the system of white supremacy, not a hog. Yeah. This is a man, to see if he can get some dignity. We talked about that phrasing before with Neely Fuller Jr. in terms of being dignified under the system of white supremacy racism. I think I got in my question. I guess if there's one, are you familiar with COINTELPRO at all? Have you heard that before?
No. Tell me more.
I guess without going into the whole, the FBI and other enforcement agencies, they had extensive programs dating back even before there was a Federal Bureau of Investigation. Where they spied.
Sorry.
Yes, counterintelligence program, spy and snoop on black people. It just that you talked about Dr. King and the sanitation strike in Memphis, and it's just because of the timing that we just had a white author who talked about all of that in Memphis specifically. He lived in Memphis specifically. Slumming came up even. How could it not? Beale Street and all of that. But he was just with us, and he said that his book, in fact, is about how white people at the FBI, part of their COINTELPRO operation, they had spies in Memphis, and one of them was the civil rights photographer Ernest Withers, and he was an informant for the FBI. His code was ME338R. Ghetto, to make it explicit about what all this is about, maintaining white supremacy. But we just talked about all of that, and I said that's another one for white people are not ignorant about racism because black people do not have armies of spies to go out and study white people and hear what they talk about privately and get all of their machinations for operating this system. I just told you that Withers' code was ME for Memphis 338. Mm-hmm. We learned from that program. That means that there were at least 338 informants in Memphis. Wow. Just Memphis. Not Tennessee, not the whole continent, just Memphis, which was not a hotbed for the civil rights movement. That's another one where I point at it and say white people are not ignorant about and because white people sat on that information. This didn't even become public that Ernest Withers was an informant and was right there in Memphis when Dr. King was killed and was transmitting live information to the FBI the day that King was killed. All this didn't become public until 2010, 3 years after Withers died. Dr. King was killed in 1968, so you have, what is that, like a 40-plus year lag in information. Exactly. That's the sort of thing that I point at and say that white people like you are supremely informed about white supremacy, racism. You had black people who were best friends with Mr. Withers. Even his family did not become aware of this until 2010 and all the details about all of this. There were at least 338 Mr. Withers, at least. That's what I mean when I say white people are supremely more informed about racism than non-white people, supremely. And you seem like you did know about this COINTELPRO program, sir?
Yeah, I mean, just, the research they did on Baldwin and King and, all of that.
Both of them with extensive files. Yes, extensive. I think there are some black people who have even larger files than Mr. Baldwin. But, hey, they got files on lots of black people during that time period. If you're black, you are suspicious. Anywhoodles, we've been chatting it up. The book, White Lies, Dismantling 10 Cultured Myths About Race. Again, lies, myths, not the same. I personally did not find this book to be very constructive. Not sure if non-white, but I personally don't think non-white people would benefit at all from reading the book, but maybe I missed a paragraph or so. Is it going to be like live streamed when you all do the book launch thing at St. James? You said it's coming up at the end of the summer. Is that going to be like a YouTube type thing or something, folks can check it out?
Probably not. We're actually doing it like in the name of the church. So, no, it'll probably just be like a local conversation. But I'm talking about the book a lot, so people could find it if they had a mind to. So, Gus, thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to talk with you.
White Lies, Dismantling 10 Cultural Myths About Race. Chatting it up again, our guest, white man, suspected racist Greg Garrett. Much obliged down at Baylor. I mentioned his name, Patrick Dennehy. Did you know his name before you depart? Former Baylor basketball star. I include that at Patrick Dennehy. You remember all that?
Yeah, of course. I've been at Baylor 37 years.
Oh, okay. Right.
We have had some terrible stuff happen, and that was the most terrible thing that I can remember. So, yeah, I do remember that. Thank you.
Talk about white lies, having the white basketball coach try to convince others to lie. And that's right in your book, too. Lie and say that this black dude was an old felonious drug peddling, crack peddling drug dealer, and that's why he got killed, because he was out here selling drugs. Not that we did anything nefarious. Like, woo! Talk about white lies indeed. Patrick Dennehy. Much obliged, Mr. Garrett. I learned it, even though I didn't think the book was constructive. I did learn from the conversation. Much obliged, and we'll keep an eye out for some of your upcoming conversations about this book. Much obliged, sir.
Okay. Thanks so much, Gus.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
sir. Context of White Supremacy. Greg Garrett, brand new book. I guess they're doing the book launch a couple days. White Lies. I would not encourage non-white people to read. Man, that right there, moving forward, anytime I pick up a book and they reference Isabel Wilkerson, Michelle Alexander, my hackles are raised. Like, oh man, this is going to be some nonsense or whatever the case may be. Michelle Alexander, not accurate at all. And particularly Isabel Wilkerson, cased. If it was one of the other sons, that would be totally different. She said it took her 15 years to write that book, and it shows that is not the case with Cased. And incidentally, Cased is a book which Isabel Wilkerson herself said, married to a white man, Isabel Wilkerson herself said is not about racism. Says that early and with emphasis, like she's adding something progressive and new thought to all this nonsense. And that's another. He had all those metaphors raked over the coal. Mr. Garrett, all the metaphors in our discussion today. Isabel Wilkerson's case is chock full of loony, goofy metaphors all the way through. And then she gets to her lame ending where she goes out to dinner with her white friend, similar to the anecdote that Mr. Garrett gave. Goes out to dinner with her white friend, and the waiter practices racism. Might have been a female server, whoever. The server practices racism against them, and Isabel Wilkerson's white friend like passively acknowledges, like, yeah, that was wrong. They brought you some cold grits or whatever they did to foul up the order. We're gonna leave because that's messed up. They didn't even do right. Let's go. What? You can go back and you can double. If you have the time, you can hear. We read Isabel Wilkerson cased in the Catherine Massey Book Club, or you can read the review that I wrote and got exact quotes and what have you to pick through in terms of all of that up until recently, that was the second worst book ever. Isabel Wilkerson cased easily. It took reading New Jim Crow and Dorothy Roberts' lame book, and again, cowbells galore. Isabel Wilkerson, married to a white man. Michelle Alexander with a white mom, which our guest today knew about, and Dorothy Roberts, white dad. Get all these authors and say that they're black, even though they are all, as they say, white adjacent, direct contact, genetic material often, with people classified as white, and it shows in the way they talk about white supremacy, racism, and what it means to be white. Put James Baldwin at the top of the list. Like I said, I get ready to vomit anytime I hear a non-white person or a white person start talking about James Baldwin. I know they are not serious. They're not even going to be accurate about what racism is, how it works. This is not because they don't agree with you or they don't think how you do. No, that has nothing to do with it. The problem is what I just said, accurate. James Baldwin does not speak about white supremacy, racism accurately. If he did, you would not hear Garrett, all these other white people quoting him all the time. Same thing. And they pick frequently, they pick from the same sources. Goofy Michelle Alexander, she does the same thing. She ends her goofy book with James Baldwin. Same goofy quotes almost all throughout the book. And yes, I'm deliberately saying goofy. Victim of white supremacy, he's VGQ qualified. But I mean, there are thousands of black people who have written books about racism. Are you telling me James Baldwin is the best? I do not agree. And are you telling me James Baldwin has the most accurate concept of racism, white supremacy, and what it means to be white? I categorically disagree. Does he even give you a definition of racism? Step down, man. Step down. And hey, James Baldwin, even if he was great, James Baldwin has been deceased for close to 50 years. Are there not updates to the system? Are you telling me ain't nobody giving us no more accurate analysis in the last 50 years? I reject all of that. Like, yes, we can include some Frederick Douglass and folks who had great analysis that's a little bit older, but I mean, really, let's move forward with our thinking. It's almost 2030. Let's get this problem solved, as opposed to going back and get concepts that are old and did not work and were inaccurate from the beginning and dragging them along so we can continue with our anachronistic thinking about this problem and what it means to be white specifically. That said, I will say things that stood out specifically. Number one, it's always challenging when we have a white person, when they have a book that is really awful, and this book is really awful, to have a white person go back and basically, he doesn't even write that much. Like, a lot of it is quotes from other people, quotes from James Baldwin, Dr. King, Michelle Alexander, Edward Baptist, Ta-Nehisi Coates, James Russell Hawkins, and on and on and on. But it's lots of quotes from people. It's not even like he has that much original analysis or insight to offer in the text. And then, as I said, it's a lot of, in my view, it's 2026. We really don't need another white person or non-white person giving us an analysis of Birth of a Nation. This is a movie that came out 100 years ago. We really do not need another analysis of slavery being at the root cause of the Civil War. Now we're talking like 200 years ago. Let's fast and really, let's get to the root of the problem. White people being dedicated to practicing racism. Like, fast forward all of this nonsense. Why is this problem still here? That doesn't have anything to do with Birth of a Nation. All the people involved with that are dead. Gone with the Wind. That's not the issue. All the people involved with that are dead. You got a lot of white people who probably haven't even read or seen Gone with the Wind. They still practice white supremacy racism. So fast forward and get to that. In 2026, what does it mean to be white, and why has this problem not been solved? That is, white people are dedicated to racism. That's what we, and when I say we, non-white people, that's what we need. A much more accurate, updated grasp of that this is a long-running problem, and white people are not. That's another one to put high at the list as well. Not myths, lies. White people lie, and one of the biggest lies is that white people are ignorant about racism. To come and say that white people are asleep or they pretend ignorance. White people are experts on white supremacy racism. This dude, he said, I wrote like 30 books. I done went and crossed up and confused all of the black folks at the St. James Church. I bet you. That's why I said I was going to see if they had a YouTube. I bet you it would be full of black people coming in and support. Right on, Greg Garrett. Woo! We heard you talk to that no-count militant nigger, and you did a great job out there talking about not all white people is racist, and up there saying that you're not an anti-racist. We know you are, and you've been fighting the good fight and been in with us all these years and all the rest of it. Incidentally, I'm going to go back and listen, because he said that they wanted to send him to seminary. Now, that might have been my ignorant, congested Negro state, and just assuming that if the black church said that they were going to send him to seminary, that there's some sort of financial contribution to it or whatever the case may be, that he, pretty vehemently said, no, I paid for it. They didn't, do no financial investment, scholarship, none of that. But that's, if they said did they send him? I'm going to have to go back and listen to that just to see the verbiage on it. I haven't been to seminary, so I can't say that I'm an expert on how all that works, being sent or recommended or none of it. Can barely spell seminary. So I'll go back and listen to that portion. But I am sure there are a lot of black people at that church who do not think of Mr. Garrett as racist, not suspect, not nothing. And this is an amazing book. Wow. Can you sign my copy? And we are not informed about white supremacy racism at all. Easy to dupe non-white people of this nature. I said, even when I started, I forgot one of the other lies that I meant to include, talking of racism, white supremacy, as though it is just an American problem. And I picked up some of that from this book as well. He starts off with Dylan Roof. Yes, that's an incident of white terrorism that happened here, South Carolina. But Dylan Roof has a global concept of white supremacy racism. How do I know that? They got the pictures as evidence. They talked about it. Before he went to shoot up all those black people, the Charleston 9, back in 2015, he had patches, white supremacist paraphernalia of South Africa. He was ahead of his time. He knew Brother Elon was on the way. Our sick white brothers and sisters in South Africa, we need to extend the white olive branch, and you come on over here and you got refuge. And anybody white, obviously we don't need Mandela's cousins or nothing, but white people, Oscar Pistorius, if you need a hand, let us know. We got you. Dylan Roof, he had them patches for both South Africa and Rhodesia. Mike Swingo. He was talking about white people around the global white race. And that is a massive lie. And I think for most non-white people, we would not grasp the import of that lie. I just said we have false concepts of what racism is and how it works. I don't think James Baldwin tells you it's a global system of white supremacy. I think it's very U.S. focused. It's a global system of white supremacy racism. Dylan Roof understood that. Global system. Even Peyton Gendron in Buffalo, he understood that. He was quoting from the race soldier in Christchurch. That's New Zealand. Other side of the world. That's what it means to be white. We don't have no borders. We're supposed to dominate the entire planet. Not Georgia, not Texas, not Dixie. Entire universe is supposed to be under the boot of white supremacy racism. And when you don't understand that, that's how you end up James Baldwin. I'm going to go flee racism and go to Paris. I'm going to be Josephine Baker and flee racism, white supremacy, and go to France. No. Ain't what my man Joe Lewis say. Another illiterate black person. Ain't nowhere to run. They say make sure you crib Joe Lewis correctly. You can run, but you can't hide from the system of white supremacy. That's it. And even you heard some of the foolishness started right when we got off this evening. When I gave my definition, he said, oh, that's right, but I got to include if you're not LGBTQ and women and all of that. I see that right there. And see, that invasion at the church, I was so glad. I didn't hear all that in the text. He didn't go to as much detail about all of that, so I'm glad he indulged there. Man, that is, what did he say? Imposition. That was his word. I said invasion. Either or. You got a predominantly black church that is a response to white supremacy racism, where white people have literally put chains on their churches, armed guards on there. You ain't coming up in here. Get out of here. All the rest of it. And then you're going to have an army of race soldiers, and they got the rainbow flag and all the rest of it, and we got to go out and we've been persecuted too. What? And even the regular white, you said you got white women there, Cindy, Megan, Tegan, Carolyn Bryant Donham's niece. They said, hey, we are white women, Michelle Alexander's mother. We know oppression. The man done messed over us too. We want to join the St. James congregation because we know patriarchal white oppression. What? And the same thing, the little white transgender, maybe they got some white ableists. They say, well, I'm white and I'm in the wheelchair, so you able and walking privileged folks. See? What? Confusion. As opposed to, hey, we're in a system of white supremacy racism. Y'all ain't hung out with us any other time. What are you doing? Y'all that invaded every other part of Austin. Is this the capstone? We gonna come invade the church too? We gonna take down the Negro pictures and put up the rainbow flag in St. James? That's the final capstone of the takeover? Racial dislocation. I'm so glad we got that part included as well. Mr. Garrett, he had said a few times in there, he said, I'm not sure why you wanted me as a guest on your program. You think I'm a racist? Duh. I can only conclude white people are not accustomed that we think white people. He said, you must be surprised. All the black people, they think I am great and amazing and awesome. Pause. None of the black people that I know think that about me based on my counter-racist work. None of them. I'm some sort of lame, idiot, moron, potential crackhead. That's what y'all say about Gus T. Not, he is amazing. Oh my God, doing brilliant work and all the rest of it. You can be classified as white. It does not take much at all. Now, he did say he's written 30 books. The book I read is not worth toilet paper. That ain't nothing I would point to as Wow, that old Greg. There is a white man, white woman, white LGBTQ that ain't racist. It's got to be Greg. It's got to be Greg. And even he said the elderly black female at the church, victim of white supremacy. Say it 2 times. Victim of white supremacy, Miss Osa. I'm not impugning her credibility. She's victim. She guaranteed take whatever perspective. But I mean, dang, that's what I mean. Repeat what I said before. It could be Miss Osa. I'm in Texas. Maybe she remembers James Byrd Jr. too. I don't sass no white man. I don't tell no white man he's a racist. You doing all your tough talk on the phone, Gus T. He in my face. He knows where I live, Gus T. I don't run my mouth with a white man. All logical. That could be Miss Osa. All of that said, it could be Miss Osa is also confused about racism, white supremacy, like Gus T, and she really does think, Mr. Greg Garrett, that's my white friend. That's a well-meaning, good white man. Is definitely not a racist. I have him over my house anytime for a salad and cold glass of grapefruit juice. That is most non-white people that I know. In fact, I would struggle to even get a black person. He said it was 0. He said he never talked to a black person. He said, racist suspect, except Gus T. That's what I expect. We do not understand what it means to be white. And when old Jeff Dahmer comes a knocking, I don't know the James Byrd Jr. I don't know his friend's name off top, but when James Byrd Jr., when his white friends come a knocking, hey, buddy, old pal, what you doing? Let's get that. And that's another one. Worst combination in the known universe. What'd I say? Exactly. Anyway, one reminder, we will be here tomorrow, getting myself back together. Hopefully I won't have a relapse. Today I did more talking than I've done in a minute. Mr. Garrett made me work a little more than I wanted with all of his faux outrage. What? You gonna rake me over the coals? What? You gonna call me Jeff Dahmer? Which I did not. But the absence of suspicion is the same on the part of black people, non-white people. Jeff Dahmer, Greg Garrett. Hey, not all white peoples is racist. Come on, give me a beer. Let's get that beer. Let's get that beer. Let's get that. You want to go to your house and get a beer? Let's go to your house and get a beer. Not all white people is racist. It don't take much. Jeff Dahmer ain't even write 30 books. I ain't never heard that. Jeff Dahmer writing any books about racism? Jeff, he might have tried to integrate the Negro church in Milwaukee too. You have a slow night at the bar, happy hour, ain't hitting on nothing? Let's go check the Bible study. Hey. Dylan Roof was welcomed with open arms as well. Not hating on it, I'm just saying, hey, generally speaking, we don't really have much suspicion of white people. Frequently, we're not allowed to have suspicion, but most of us, victims of racism, that's a part of my victimization. We do not understand what it means to be white. We don't understand the system of white supremacy racism. That's why even something like that, I could see a lot of victims of racism, they would hear the first part of the exchange we had this evening. I give my definition of racism. You say, oh, that's good. We just got to add in women and LGBTQ and the folks in the wheelchair and blah, 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 blah. They would say, he's right, Gus T. Those people are victims of oppression too. And you need to add them in and see that they're brothers, similar, kindred spirit, trying to produce just democracy and justice. Confusion. And racism, didn't we just have Pride Parade in June? I know it's August, beginning. Didn't we just have Pride? They had it in July in some places. All of that has an end. Even, dare I say, that's why the invasion at the church. We're going to make sure we ain't going to have no more Dr. Kings started from the church and say we're going to get serious about racism. In fact, hey, we ain't going to have no more Minister Malcolm X. We don't have no more ministers and folks think you want to get serious about racism, white supremacy. George Floyd happened. They do a remembrance of George Floyd Jr. and you all decide you want to get on the ball, maybe do a study session and read Neely Fuller Jr.'s work or something else. So we're going to get serious about what racism is. Oh, no. We sabotage all that. Y'all going to read anything. It's going to be Greg Garrett. We have a book launch and everything. Even think about that. Think about that. A historically black church in Texas, not that far from where Jesse Washington was lynched, 1917, one of the more prominent popularized lynchings of a privileged black male, that in this area, historically black church, white book launch. How many books written by a black person have had a book launch there, or even just what I mentioned Neely Fuller Jr., I mentioned Dr. Wellesley. Did they get to come to St. James in Austin and give a talk to the congregation? Mr. Fuller got a whole section on religion, right? And both of them, got whole sections in their book talking about religion. Yes? They get an invite to come and talk about racism? And how about, wait. Delectable Negro, you think they had a session? We come book launch? What you think? Richard Williams, Black and White, The Way I See It. What you think? I wish I had asked that one. Have there been other books that have been promoted or launched there just to see? Like, I hope this isn't the first. Invasion. Absolutely. Any hoodles. We will be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So this is third time as the charm. We were supposed to do this program a week ago from this past Sunday. I got sick, as you can hear in my voice. I'm still recovering, but I'm well enough to be here tomorrow and ready to roll. I think, at least for now. Make sure I don't have a relapse when I wake up. But we should be here 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. White guest. We'll do it up. Also, a brand new book published this year about the system of white supremacy. Today we talked about the area of religion. Tomorrow, basically health. That's not one of Mr. Fuller's 9, but basically health. And I can proudly, as I mentioned, the Catherine Massey Book Club and all of the amazing work that we have read over our 14-year plus history, reading the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams now. We read one of the amazing books, top 5 for Gus T., Harriet A. Washington's Medical Apartheid. That is so important for tomorrow's broadcast. So important, pretty much every broadcast that we do. That would be another one. Ain't no such thing as separation. How are white people going to go get to do all of their kooky experiments on black people if we are separate? The great Harriet Washington, but that is very relevant to tomorrow's broadcast. If you have not read the book or didn't get to hang out with us for that study session in the archives, go check it out. Wow, every page of the book for tomorrow. I even had to go back and look through and re-listen to some of Medical Apartheid with Harriet A. Washington because it was so important, foundational, really. I was even shocked that the author for tomorrow's program does not cite Harriet A. Washington in his book, but whatever, we'll chat it up about that tomorrow. Anywho, also I mentioned the book club. Just as I was getting sick, I think the audio for the 4th session of Robert and Mabel Williams' memoirs, the audio was distorted. I was able to remaster it, as they say, and upload it so it is fresh, not distorted. If it messed over anyone's listening experience for the 4th session of the book club, you can go back and check. It should be all the places where you get your podcast: Apple Podcast, Podbean, Podchaser, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever else the cool podcasts hang out. You should see the remastered version that sounds correct. I deleted the version with the distorted audio in it, but it was still lingering for some reason. Hopefully that one will drop out within a day or so. So the only version that will be there will be the correct audio version of the 4th installment on the memoirs, Robert F. and Mabel Williams. But thank you for the folks who gave me a head up. I think there's one more program where the audio was distorted in the upload that I need to go back and correct. Now that I have my strength and vitality back, I will hop on that in the next 24 hours or so. Hopefully I can update people about that tomorrow when we broadcast with our white guest. That's it. I will, as I'm getting back in the flow, I'll give an update on the situation in Milwaukee and trying to get Chided C. Robinson's transcript for the jury selection, as well as the letters of support for her killer, Maxwell Anderson, who was also not thought of as a racist. Widespread. But we'll give updates on that. Hopefully some of the other constructive info for this summer. But can't say enough. Health is wealth. Take care of your health. Take care of your health. I'm so glad I can even look outside. I'm so thankful that we have clear air in Seattle. I could cry. I am so ready for the summer of 2026 to end. I normally, I'm so sad, like, I want it to stay warm and sunny and all that. The wildfires knocked all of that out. Like, man, let's get autumn. Let's ride. I'm done with all of that. The warm weather, sun. If we're going to have wildfires and drought in certain part of that, let's get to autumn. The foliage has already begun in certain chunks of Seattle and all that, which it normally does. We're talking like mid-August. Basically, foliage normally begins like late July out here, but the foliage has already begun and such, and the temperature is starting to come down a little bit in the evenings. Let us get to autumn so that we can be done with all the wild. That was such a traumatic, not to mention me being sick, but just the cloud or the sky being so thick with soot and gray, and oh man, it was not healthy, especially while I was already suffering from respiratory issues, being sick. Not healthy at all. I felt like I was back in Los Angeles, if anything. Man, air, what is better than breathing? What is more important than your health? Take excellent care of your health. I talked about that before, that, man, if we're going to replace white supremacy with justice, we're going to need some measure of health and vitality. Dr. Welsing is correct. No victim of racism qualifies for health, mental or otherwise. But, man, let us try and mitigate as best we can. Not doing mad dog every day, snorting crack, eating bad food, fried chicken or whatever else. Try as best we can, eat healthy, take care of ourselves so that we will have the ability to put racist man, racist woman, racist child out of business. We will do it up tomorrow, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully constructive, worthy of your time and energy. White guests only as we close out summer of 2026. Just said, but it bears repeating, sobriety would be best. We need high-functioning brain computers. One, you have a system that's operated by deception. We need lots of folks who are thinking critically to evaluate what is happening in the system of white supremacy racism. There are so many snares and traps by racist white people. We need to be alert. Even white people not answering questions. Lots of that. Old Mr. Garrett throwing around, not answering questions or coming back with another question or some fake outrage. You done raked me over the coals. Psh, get out of here. Y'all raked James Byrd Jr. over the road. That's your raking, called raked over the coals. Anywho, and is that, you say coal? I thought the coal, you got the lump of coal, isn't that what they put in your stocking? You done misbehaved. They put an old lump of blackness. And ain't that what it is? So you done raked me over the coal. Get out of here. Anyway, Creator, we ask, remind, really for Mr. Garrett, Jeff Dahmer, Carol and Brian Donham, so we're not just being patriarchal. Remind us to stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, Stop cursing and name-calling people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.